Hello, I'm senior programmer Jen Wilson, and welcome to this Film Independent Presents Q&A for the film Sheepdog, written and directed by Steven Grayhm. Special thanks to our lead sponsor, the Golden Globe Foundation, our media sponsor, KCRW, and our virtual screenings partner, Vision Media. And now please join me in welcoming writer, director, star Steven Grayhm, actor and film independent board member Vondie Curtis Hall, and actor and producer Matt Dallas. Thank you for coming and welcome.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us. All right.
Um,
Thank you.
Steven, just want to start by talking about how this film came into being. What inspired you to write and direct a film about veterans and PTSD?
Sure. So in 2011, my car broke down 3 hours north of Los Angeles. I had been shooting a movie in Vancouver, Canada, and I drove through the night back home to LA. So my car breaks down. I call the local tow truck company, and the gentleman who picked me up, was just like, saddle up, partner. We got a 3 hour ride into town. And during that ride, I was really tired, so I was kind of nodding off, and he began to just speak softly about his life. And he began to open up about the challenges of his marriage and being the father of three children. And then he, went into his financial hardship and then all the medication that he was on that was tethered to his military service. And he slowly began to open up about his deployments overseas. And I don't think I said but three words during that drive. I just listened. During that conversation, he kept saying, "I can't believe I'm telling you this. I've never told my wife this. I've never even told a therapist this." We got back to LA, and I looked him in the eyes, and I thanked him, and I was pretty sure I would probably never see him again. And that was probably what he wanted, because he was able to share his story with no judgment or shame, and have that cathartic moment maybe. That lit the spark. That week, I couldn't stop thinking about him, and I felt beyond a sense of curiosity, a sense of responsibility. And I was pretty certain that there had to be more men and women just like him. And that's when I went to Matt and I shared this experience. And I told Matt I'd been journaling about this. I wasn't sure I was going to turn this into a screenplay. I just needed to get the answers. I just needed to get the truth. And that summer, 2011, Matt and I began the journey, and we set out on a nationwide road trip where we met with veterans and mental health workers and Gold Star families and so on.
Oh, so Matt has been on this journey with you since the beginning then too.
Oh yeah, that was like so. And Matt, I'd love for you to speak to this, but like Matt and I were shooting a Western, we had just met on the Paramount Ranch, and this experience had only happened less than a month prior. Matt had shared a personal story with me in his own life, and I'll never forget him smiling through the pain. And that's what I also saw in that tow truck driver. So I said to him, "Hey, I don't know that this is going to be a screenplay. I don't know what this is going to be, but I think we have to tell these people's stories. We have a responsibility to. I think you should play my best friend in the movie if it becomes that. But the caveat is you have to go on the road with me because you have to see this for yourself. You have to see what I saw in the cab of that tow truck." And he agreed to do it. And so we set off, and we were on the road for 3 months together, going all over the country and every nook and cranny you can imagine, meeting with veterans and mental health workers.
So did you craft the script based on the things that they told you specifically?
Yeah, in storytelling, the story begins to inform its direction, of where you're going to take it. And the truth is, because this has been a 14-year journey to today, as we got older, the characters got older. And so there was a point where I showed three deployments in the movie. I had written them. And for budgetary reasons, like 6 months before going to camera, I had to cut them all. But that said, those deployments informed our characters, right? So rather than me show the audience the deployment in the therapy session with Virginia Madsen, I actually talk about it. And so it's loosely based, yes, on real folks that I met with that inspired it. Like all Vondie Curtis Hall's dialogue was inspired by the time I spent doing Honor Flight taking Vietnam veterans to their respective memorial in DC, and all the conversations that came out at night over a whiskey, the speech that Mr. Hall gives on the front lawn, that was all informed by everything that came out in that time spent with them. So that was my, as the storyteller of holding up the mirror, that was my commitment, was to not judge the characters and just tell the truth as it was shared with me.
So, talk about your casting process. What was it like finding all these amazing veteran American actors for your movie?
So, Mr. Hall, I don't mean to embarrass you
Yeah.
because it means just, it's just, this is the truth. I saw Mr. Hall's reel, and I believe that the first piece of footage was from Harriet, and your character had not yet spoken a word, and the camera slowly pushes in on his face as he's about to speak to the slaves in the film that his character is. And I jumped out of my chair. My wife was in the room, and I was like, "That's him. That's him. That's Whitney right there. The soul in his eyes, right there." He hadn't even spoken a word yet, and I get shivers telling the story because when we went into rehearsal and we rehearsed the scene the night before we shot on the front lawn, my breath was taken away. Like I knew, like that's a testament to trusting your instinct when it's what you feel oftentimes. And so with Mr. Hall, as I envisioned it in my mind's eyes of those words that I had written based on those Vietnam veterans, the humanity that Mr. Hall brought to that was my my hope and my dream. And my job being the director and in the scene with him was to just try not to be Steven Grayhm, the guy who's in awe of this performance, but to remain Calvin because it was just so beautiful. You know, with Virginia Madsen, I met with her 4 months prior to going to camera, and Virginia had been touched personally by some of these things in her own life that she hasn't yet spoken publicly about. But I knew that, and I was concerned because my directing style is to always make you feel safe, never to manipulate, and just, if you provide a safe environment, you're going to get the best work, And and when Virginia came, that speech she gives my character in that came from a very real place, and that was one take. And it's just breathtaking. Lily Cooper, she's a Broadway actress and tough. And all the military spouses I sat in front of, Lily embodied every aspect of them. And when she gave that speech at my daughter's wake, again, you could hear a pin drop in the room, and we were all like, we were on sacred ground, of like what was happening. Dominic Fumusa, I always wanted it, the Coach O character is like his civilian friend. And I wanted a warmth, but a very tough love aspect to that character who's not going to take any crap from my character, but really cares, And Dominic embodied that, in all the work that I saw. And then the first meeting I had with him, I knew he was Coach O. And then, of course, I told you with Matt, Matt smiling through the pain in 2011, Matt seeing it all firsthand for himself, for what we experienced over multiple road trips that we did and the research that we did, that all came through on screen. Matt, you could talk about it, but Matt gained 47 pounds for the role. And that was intentional because his character was sort of eating his pain. And we saw a lot of that. It wasn't just like drug and alcohol abuse. It was just other forms of coping, if you will. And that was really important. And that came out and Matt moved differently because his body had never been in this place before, ever in his acting career. And it really brought a different color out to him and a different sort of approach, I think. And it's all there on the screen.
Vondie, for you, I'm just wondering what attracted you to do the movie.
Well, I read the script and I really connected to the character. I thought it was really a well-written script, and I was a fan of Steven's work as an actor, and I just thought this is going to be a nice journey to take as an actor. Um, And I'd also had a lot of friends who had experienced the Vietnam War and had come back with whatever maladies. And so I thought it was going to be a great tribute to them as well.
So did you draw on particular ex you drew on particular experiences from your friends? Did you draw on experiences of formerly incarcerated vets as well?
No, I didn't draw on experiences from former incarcerated vets, but I drew on the pain of the vets that I met that came home. And of course, that was my error, and so I was quite aware of my friends who went, my friends who went and died, my friends who came back, as I said, with various uh, uh, problems. And I was aware of how Vietnam vets were received um, post the peace marches, and of course, no ticker tape parades, and of course, you know, uh, the war is going to stop, but it's not going to stop, and finally ending, and the draft ending, and all those things in around that time. Um, and so, drawing from that was the thrust of it, because the 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 incarceration part of it carries its own pain, but they are similarly related. The trauma of prison and the trauma of war, the PTSD from both. There's a blurred line there, and so
Right.
I was able to just finally embrace. Mostly, it was mostly about the vet.
So
Uh,
there's the scene where the woman says something about you're not officially recognized as a vet.
yeah.
How does that happen? Does that happen when people are incarcerated? They lose their veteran status, or what exactly was that about?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll
Yeah.
let Stephen talk to that because he wrote it. But it seems to me in the script that he was dishonorably discharged, which is the reason he went to prison. But I'll let Stephen elaborate on that.
Yeah. So because of and there's no spoiler alert because everybody's seen the film, but because of the incident that happened, which as we learn in the story was not his fault, but the way that that court case went, yeah, you get stripped of all your medals and then you lose all your health benefits. It doesn't matter if you've been 30 years in the military, if something like that can happen to you on a DUI. Like you don't need to go and be incarcerated. Like it's there, it's pretty strict. And part of his pain was that he had given that was his identity, for multiple decades to serve in the Marine Corps and then have that stripped away from him for the reason that it was, then go away and have his family, his identity taken from him as a Marine and then have his family taken from him, have no relationship. So that's why on the scene on the front lawn, there's so much at stake where he's saying like, you don't know what it's to lose everything, And I felt like the stakes were really high there because as Vondie said, there's two aspects here, being incarcerated, obviously, and then the shame of having that taken from you of your service. Um, and then where does that leave you? Where does that leave you? You know?
I'm wondering if you could talk about the very intense scene where Vondie comes home and finds you at the kitchen table with the gun. Um, just sort of as actors shaping that. Do you have any memories of creating that scene? It was so, I don't want to say beautiful, but it was, it's a beautiful scene about suicide and trying to talk someone down from that ledge.
Yeah,
Um, just wondering if you could talk about crafting that scene, the two of you.
Sure, Vondie, I'll speak a little bit about it, and then if you want to share your experience, being that, your character has this beautiful speech in it, but it was really hard. It's hard to talk about it right now because it's like I can't watch that in a theater. Like that's usually the part that I step out, because I've lost people along the way in this journey. And so it was important to me to not go too far with the ideation of it. Like the gun had to stay on the table. But I have to tell you, as an actor, that was one of the moments in the film where everything around me went away and it was just present with Mr. Hall. The boom op, camera, all the things that you can literally hear breathing in the room as you normally do because there's humans around you trying to capture this. And it all went away and it was just he and I. And and the and the delivery of it was just so stunning and so warm. And there was just so many levels there that Mr. Hall went to that I'm and when he touched my hand in the scene and that I literally felt for whatever I was carrying on this journey as the storyteller, I literally felt it go off my shoulders just in that first touch of that when he took that. So it was just it was a pretty I have nothing to compare that to in my professional career, that scene or that moment. So, Mr. Hall, if you want to speak to that.
Um, it was a wonderful moment. I don't think I think it's one of those rare moments, as an actor where you just fully present and you embracing the words. I mean, Stephen written some great words to say, and and the intention was to save this person is who's gone through what we have all gone through as war veterans who have faced the beast and somehow need to get to the other side. And so, he wrote some great words, set a great intention, and it was one of those moments where just the two of us in the room, I don't even remember touching his hand or anything. I mean, all that stuff is just the organic moment coming through so it was one of those magical moments as an actor. I mean, candidly, I have to say that that moment was more transcendental than, say, the moment outside when I was, you know, talking about the pain of being a vet and not being, I felt more outside of myself, even though it was more, it was an organic moment, but I still felt a bit outside of myself. I didn't feel any of that in this scene. So, sometimes, in movies and on stage, you get the moment to have these transcendental moments as actors, and that's um, that's why I do it.
Thank you too for talking about that incredible scene. For Matt, um, something that I really appreciated about this movie is that they're all so different. They're all, it just made me think about like PTSD is not the same for every person. Everybody is having their own experience of PTSD and what that means for them. And I really got that so much in this movie. For Matt, what do you think his experience, your character's experience of his PTSD is? How is it different from the other characters? For me, he seems like the character who's way lighter than the other two, and so it's more unexpected that he would kill himself. What was that about for you?
Yeah, I think that, when approaching Daryl, it was important that we weren't necessarily trying to tip the hat towards his ultimate, like where he ends up in the story. Because this is something that we saw a lot when we would, meet with men and women across the country, is that there are often so many people that smile through the pain, and we see it so often that, often, I mean, maybe this is the wrong comparison, but like we see comedians that are like have like very dark sort of things that they're hiding within them. And it's the same thing as like he's somebody that is he's searching for the joy and the love and to be able to like bring that love and joy to other people, and he doesn't want to trouble anyone else with his demons. It's like his purpose is to live and love and support the people and his brothers, around him, his community, his daughter, his like trying to keep everybody else happy, and maybe like through if he can just keep everybody else happy, then maybe he can fix, sort of the darkness that's lurking within himself. Um, but what's interesting is we've come out a lot of, we spent the past year on the film festival circuit, and we've screened this film quite a bit. And so coming out of a lot of the screenings, there were oftentimes so many people that would be like, why did your character do that? Like how I don't understand how. But then there were so many people that came up to me and said, no, I knew it, and I was able because either they had experienced trauma or maybe like saw parts of themselves in Daryl's journey, but they said, no, it was there all along. And it was the subtle things, it was maybe the one line or the hug that just lasted a little too long. Um, that really those signs were there all along. And I hope that, like maybe those people that didn't really like were blindsided by it, maybe would go back and watch it a second time and be like, oh, yes, there he was sort of screaming for help all along. He just didn't know how to do it, and he didn't want to trouble anybody else with his baggage.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be a question of mine is both what are people's reactions to the film and what did you hope people's reactions would be to the film? So I guess to start with, what have there been a lot of veterans and veteran families coming to the film and what have their reactions been?
Yeah, so we have been incredibly blessed, like during this, the film festival circuit, and even being able to screen it outside of film festivals, is that we've um we've had a large turnout of the veteran community or just military community, but also the mental health workers community. And but we've had, for instance, like we've had a somebody stand up after a screening and say, listen, like that's it. Like, I wish that I had this movie 10 years ago to show my wife so that she could understand or the reason I am the way I am, and the reason why she is the way she is. And we've had other ones that just like, come up to us and in tears and just saying, for the first time in my life, I feel seen. I feel like somebody, um, like actually did the work to represent it in a way that wasn't maybe I don't know, like it's a way that we've seen in in films of our generation. But yeah, I mean, Stephen can speak a lot to this too, that there's been, yeah, a huge outpouring of support. And, oftentimes, we even have like a boots on the ground team that will, as we were going into cities, they would roll into, VFWs and Legions, and they would like pull people out of off bar stools to say, you have to see this movie. And they'd say, I don't want to go see, I've seen the movies. I don't need to see another one. And they went into it very reluctantly. And by the time they were coming out, they were in tears and they were saying, thank you for making me come to see this film.
Yeah, I think Matt said that so eloquently. The response has been profound. I think the movie is doing what we always hoped and wished it could do, which was to educate and entertain, but to provide at the end of the day either a call to action for civilians and offer hope to veterans that they know that they're not alone, that it is okay to not be okay, and that they matter. And I think that, so much of our research, we saw so many folks suffering in silence. Not everybody has trauma, not everybody's been deployed, and not everybody's certainly been in combat. But that's why it was so important to show it multi-layered, that you can have childhood trauma. You could have trauma in your family life that might not necessarily be related to military. But what was important is that you don't have to do it on your own, and committing to doing the work is a worthy journey to take. And as Lily Cooper's character says in the movie, walking through that front door can be the longest road traveled. you know? And I think it was really important that folks are left with that in spite of all of that, that you may have post-traumatic stress, but on the other side of that is post-traumatic growth.
Mm.
And we've always hoped that we can do that. And so, as Matt said, when you have a group of Vietnam veterans standing up in an audience in a full auditorium saying, "You guys nailed it. After 50 plus years, I finally feel seen and heard." When you have, you know, OIF or OEF, the younger vets saying, you know, as Matt said, finally there's a movie I can show my family so they understand why I am the way I am and why they are the way they are. And then the mental health workers, where they were like, we had younger groups of in training mental health workers from the National Association of Social Workers come in, and some of the younger trainees are like, I'm going through this right now in my studies. Oh my God, this is so real. And then the ones that are already out there training that have patients saying, you guys nailed it with all the different treatments like EMDR and so on, and in the treatment adverse veterans that don't want it, you know? So that was, you know, we've been asked this before of like, what was the greatest challenge in the last 14 years? Honestly, it was just getting it right. That's that was our biggest concern. Like we were carrying this immense responsibility of all these folks sharing the most intimate details of their lives with us. And how do we do that justice in a 2 hour time period? So we're just so grateful.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for all of you, for your commitment to this project and just the incredible work in it. Just to wrap up, for anybody who sees this and wants to recommend it, is the film going to be in theaters, on streaming, and when would that be?
Sure. So we're in select theaters this December, and then we're nationwide in January.
Well, congratulations. Thank you so much for doing this Q&A with me, and good luck on all your next steps, next screenings.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.